Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Big Screen Show. My name is Victor,
I'm Jorge.
I'm Alex.
and we are back for our Loki Season 2, Episode 3 review. We bring you guys a video on Loki and others once a week. At least we try to. So if you like this video or content like this in general, please consider subscribing because it really does help us out. And if you end up enjoying this video, please make sure to let us know by clicking that thumbs up button down there because it also, again, really does help us out. But with that housekeeping stuff aside, guys, Loki, episode 3, we're at the halfway point of season 2. It's going by so fast, man. Gosh. If this first 3 weeks went by so fast, then we'll be done before we know it. But finally, a little bit more of a less vague of an episode, I'll say. Exciting stuff. But let's go around and just give our general thoughts on this episode to start with. Jorge, general thoughts.
Very cool episode. I think it's very innovative, which is something that I really appreciate from Marvel because it gives you the sensation of like watching the first few episodes of WandaVision because of this vintage, old timer vibe that the episode has. So, from that point, amazing. I really like the vibe of, how the episode was designed. And obviously, the elephant in the room, we get to meet not one, but two variants of Kang. And obviously in different points in their life. But, we get to see the more adult Victor Timely version of him. And man, I'm so excited to see what more he's gonna offer us in the show. We're gonna dive a little bit more into it later in the video, but I liked him. I really liked him. I like his mannerisms, his performance. The character itself is very interesting, because he's very innocent at this point. He still doesn't understand the complexity of the story that he's being part of
his life, really.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So, amazing episode. I really liked it. I think it's been the best one out of the 3 episodes so far in the season.
Okay.
And I'm too excited and too curious to see what more they're going to bring.
Nice. Heck yeah. Alex?
Oh boy, this definitely I think has to be a good contender for one of my favorite episodes so far from like last episode. But honestly, I'm gonna give it this episode 3, because it just gives a whole lot more of Jonathan Majors' performance as one of the Kang variants. Because like I love his performance, how every time he plays a variant, they're so very distinct where they're never the same, and that just shows how much of a great actor with range that he is. Because that dude is like becoming like one of my favorite actors of this modern age right now. It's amazing. But yeah, episode definitely had like some very good moments with this character, but also has some very different intense moments with as we're gonna find out later on with the characters with Renslayer and Miss Minutes in here, and especially a lot more good interaction with Loki, Mobius, and the rest, and this whole complex different teams that's happening in this one part of the timeline in search of this variant.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with both of you guys. It's so far definitely my favorite episode of the season so far. I think just because we're finally kind of getting more into the nitty-gritty and branching out of like the vagueness and the like so much pondering and wandering and questions. Not to say there isn't still a lot of that, but it's just less of compared to the last 2 episodes. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, I agree with Jonathan Majors' appearance as Victor Timely, a Kang variant in this episode. It was top notch. I love, like you said, Alex, like his performance is just like he's just Victor Timely. Like it's unique to that and to that character. His performance, especially when you compare his performance in like Quantum Mania, for example, or at the end, or the season 1 Loki finale where he was, at the end of time, and like all 3 of them have all been kind of different performances, but they've all been great. And I mean, it goes back to what all 3 of us have talked about off screen, which is just that Jonathan Majors is Kang, and he's meant for this role. He's good in this role, and clearly, uh, they picked the right actor because he has the capable amount of range to be this character. Because in order to be this character, you have to be able to give different types of performances while also being the same person at the same time. Because Kang is there's so many of them, right? So many variants. It's just the complexity of this character specifically, and so you need a certain type of actor to be able to complete with that mission, and he's doing a great job of that so far for sure. Um, but let's get right in it, right? Like, let's get into the nitty gritty. Um, we start in 1868, Sacred Timeline, with we finally see Renslayer
Yeah.
and Miss Minutes. We finally see them, and they are currently aware that Kang is dead, the one at the end of time, and therefore they were tasked with kind of setting up the like kind of planting the seed that will allow for this different variant to kind of follow his path. And so for that, or for them, that means putting this TVA book through a window in this little house in Chicago in 1868 for this kid to pick up, which we obviously find out it is a young Victor Timely. Rough estimate, less than 10 years old, older than like 6. So he's somewhere around that age. At least I would assume, not that it's specified. But he's a kid and he picks it up, and but we pan to the TVA, where we go back to the TVA, and there's still chaos, and OB cannot stop. Excuse me, OB cannot stop stressing about how we're all gonna die. We're all gonna die, So that obviously, we get a hit on Renslayer's tempad, and so we find the location, and Mobius and Loki then follow suit and go to 1893 Chicago, the World's Fair, in a branch timeline. And this is where it really gets started, right? They find out, or they find Renslayer, but they're at this kind of exhibit for this Victor Timely's like loom device being kind of shown, and there he is. He comes out, and I just want to say that presentation he gave, I mean, great job, because Victor Timely kind of has like this little kind of stutter, like you can just kind of tell he's like this kind of nerd, you know. But what are you guys' thoughts on that up to this point of the episode? Like, I love that performance from him while he was kind of giving that exhibition of the temporal loom. But what were you guys' thoughts?
Well, to me, I think it's very interesting how Marvel is intentionally showing if we're on the sacred timeline or in a branch timeline, because it leaves that open door for the viewers to try to theorize, like, like what's going on, why sometimes we're in a branch timeline and other times we're in the sacred timeline. What's the correlation,
Yeah.
in the story, that we're seeing. Uh, Obviously, seeing this version of Khan as Victor Timely is very, very cool, very interesting. We see this vintage Khan in the past. His beginnings. Where he started showing his inventions to the world. It's funny because obviously the technology at the time doesn't go hand in hand with his ideas and capacity to think. So
he's trying to plot out like the book that was obviously left back in 1868, but all that comes from way in the future.
He's very restricted.
It's
very similar as Howard Stark in his time. He knew he didn't have the technology to create the new element, for example, and he left it to Tony to make it. So we see something similar here. But the thing that I like the most up to this point is still Loki and his sense of danger and fear for Kang, because we're introduced to this version of Kang, as you said. It's a little nerdy, a little extrovert, or awkwardly social, introvert, or awkwardly social in a way.
Yeah,
And
like there's nothing scary about him when you're
Correct.
looking at it through Mobius or anybody else's lens. But again,
Yeah.
going back to the theme that we've talked about, Loki's the only one that knows, so he's freaking
Man,
out.
Loki's shaking, bro. And Moise, he makes a joke. Moise being Moise, he's like, "Come on, man, he doesn't look that scary.
Right.
He looks like a regular dude, But Loki's like, nah, dude, it's him, and we all should be like scared, like
Yeah.
fearing him, So
Yeah.
that was very interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Alex, any thoughts?
I do want to add that I do agree with Bodie on the MCU's use for like the sacred timeline and like the branch timeline and everything. But also I want to say how like Loki does a better job of setting up Kang and everything and this potential threat way better than like the MCU movies have been doing, like ever since with Quantum Mania. I'm just gonna add that in there. But yeah, it kind of shows how like since this is a branch timeline, it shows that this Victor Timely is basically setting up for like the future of the TVA and of the Kang himself. Which is also another interesting point because in comics, Victor Timely was actually an alias of Kang, who basically came from like the future into the past to set up future advanced technology for himself to be used later in the future to basically fight off and destroy the heroes, the Avengers.
Hmm.
So they're basically MCU kind of taking this, but kind of making it a variant that's basically setting up for Kang's other future self of another variant,
Yeah.
which I think is honestly pretty smartly well done so far. It's going the way I think in like down the line and later on. And yeah, Jonathan Major's performance as Victor Timely definitely shows a very difference. Like here, he seems very intelligent, but has like a mind where like, he has advanced ideas thanks to TVA guidebook and other ideas. But due to the time that he's in, he's very limited with resources since there's nothing's advanced yet. So he's basically just kind of scrounging at this point. But he's like very nervous and timid, shaky, and everything. Where he tries to create this like false facade of confidence to try to make people believe in what he's doing, what he's seeing. So he's
Right.
basically setting everything up like a prototype temporal loom, which he's using in that time to help make power and make self-sufficient energy. And then we're gonna find out later on, which we're gonna talk about later, but he's essentially just like the prepper for Kang and later on.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the one just kind of setting everything up. Yeah. But it was such a cool scene to just to see that entrance of him in the season, which is like really cool to just witness and just like you said, Jorge, like Loki's like I'm scared, but like Mobius is like, dude, like how can you be scared? Like he can barely finish a sentence, like.
I
So
I, I
it's
really I really like his performance because he's literally
mm-hmm.
carrying all the impact that season one had onto this season, and he's the only character embodying all the emotions that we went through in the last season because he's the
Yeah,
only one who knew Kang at the end of time. So I
yeah,
mean the other one is Sylvie, but Sylvie we know that she don't want nothing to do with it. She
yeah.
just wants to like
She
live her
doesn't really
life.
have that fear like Loki does,
Yeah,
like because she's just being so hard headed at the time. But
yeah,
they also see that Renslayer is also in the building, like I said, and so once he finishes his presentation, um, it's kind of like a race from both sides, like Miss Minutes and Renslayer versus Loki and Mobius to kind of have a conversation with them and kind of take them on their own separate personal ventures led location, destination, whatever.
yeah,
Um, and that turns into a very entertaining, I'll say, at least for me, kind of chase about, kind of tug and pull. When they, also get in the the Ferris wheel, and then you had this funny kind of like, which was like, I assume it's kind of like a little bit of comedic relief, but also it just felt okay. Like it didn't feel forced or like stupid that it was there. But having this kind of third party also added to this chase, but it was from problems within the world that they were currently in. The guy that felt like he was ripping him off or whatever, and also kind of wanted to chase after him and stuff. So I thought it was
yeah.
funny how it's like, us two over here are worried about like literally time itself and all existence. You're over here kind of chasing this dude because he ripped you off. You know, it's kind
Yeah.
of funny.
Yeah, another death also shows a major difference. Victor Timely is basically a confidence trickster, as he calls it,
Mm,
where he essentially kind of cons people of their money with these vague concepts and ideas that he makes that are just basically prototypes.
yeah,
Because like he has the ideas, but he doesn't have like anything to really
he doesn't have the
make
means
it
to the
work.
end.
Yeah, he really doesn't know how to make it work to its full potential as he wants it to be.
Yeah,
But he still just screws people over their money, and now he's basically like the main cause of all this trouble that's going on as like Team Renslayer, Team Loki, and then Sylvie come in to just try and like have their own different plans of what to do with them.
right. So then you know, out of nowhere, Sylvie steps in, and that was a very shocking moment. But
Up until that point, the episode was being like very like friendly and jelly and happy in a way. We
mhm,
had like obviously like our moments, but
it was being cordial.
up to the point she shows up, everything changes. Everything
Yeah,
gets like serious. It's like, okay,
serious. Yeah,
she's not playing around. She's coming here to kill him straight
right.
up. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no like talking about it. There's no like analyzing. No, none of
Right.
that.
And I love that scene where they're in the Ferris wheel and it's just Loki and Sylvie and He Who Remains, just Victor Timely, just like kind of stuck on this wall behind him,
Yeah,
where he's like so confused, but also you can tell throughout the entirety of his interactions with all of these people, Victor's, he is confused because obviously he's just a person in the 1893, but also not at all because he kind of just had a feeling that there is like more to life than what he is currently in. Like he's not clueless. I guess he's not like in super shock. Like when he finally gets to sit down and like Renslayer tells him about like you are this, and kind of telling him what he is in the future. He's not like what, like having this total meltdown, whereas like probably anybody else in the 1800s would have. He's like, this is new information, but it's definitely kind of making sense and kind of like not outside of the realm of possibilities. You know what I mean? So that's what kind of scared me about it, if I'm being honest, because it's like he's receiving this info and he's taking it a little too well, and it's like you're kind of opening that door for what the ultimate fear ultimately is to actually occur, because he's kind of receiving this information now and like kind of being chill about it. So that's how I looked at it. But yeah, they have that conversation and basically he gets swayed to go with Renslayer and Miss Minutes. Like that's another thing. Like he meets Miss Minutes and just doesn't bat an eye, like a literal floating AI clock.
yeah.
um,
It was crazy to see the fact that he understands what an AI is.
right,
I
exactly,
was like, dude, like how can you
exactly,
comprehend that at that time?
exactly, bro. It's
Like,
because he knows. He knows. Like
yeah,
it's at the end of
he's
the
a
day, he
genius.
knows.
He's a
Right?
genius.
Yeah.
He literally developed a temporal loom in that time. With that technology of that time, like it's
Right.
insane.
Exactly. But that leads them ultimately to have to flee to his Wisconsin lab. But this was something I wanted to touch on. What were you guys' thoughts on the decision to kind of have Renslayer be, when they're on this boat ride to Wisconsin, be like flirtatious?
Well, in the comics, like they're a couple. If I'm
Oh,
not
really?
mistaken,
Yeah, you're
they
right.
were they were a couple at some point. And I mean,
Oh,
it's they're kind of like bringing that into the show, but also like leaving very clear that yeah, like she might have been a potential love interest,
hmm,
but she's just for the mission and he's just for the progress, if you want to call it. And then you have
right.
Miss Minutes pulling the strings, dude. Miss Minutes, she's like crazy.
Yeah, she's a little psycho.
Crazy,
Yeah,
bro. She's like,
Yeah.
this is like the creepiest I've ever seen her.
bro,
She creeped me out.
hard, dude. She was being like super extra jealous and
Mhm.
like toxic and like trying to like throw dirt at Ravonna. Bro, I was like, dude,
Yeah,
she has like issues, like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's really
yeah,
trying to. She was really trying to separate them. She was really trying to separate Victor and Renslayer during all the
yeah,
time with the boat and everything.
yeah.
yeah,
Like she
They're
literally,
jealous.
yeah.
straight up, yeah,
Yeah, and it's crazy. Uh, but once they get to the lab, uh, ultimately Victor kind of realizes because Miss Minutes kind of really comes on to him,
Getting all
and
creepy and everything
yeah,
on
getting
him like
really really
that.
creepy, and he kind of gets like he genuinely like gets scared also, so he just like I'm like I'm putting you back in the fucking temp pad,
yeah,
um, but I think that's some of the best of this episode for me personally. Like when they're at the lab and we have all the parties kind of there because then Renslayer arrives, um, Loki and Mobius arrive, and then Sylvie arrive, and Sylvie still arrives with this like kind of pissed off vibe and kind of just kind of knocks everybody out with her powers, but then eventually kind of just really thinks about it, and it's like just looks at Loki and is like, please don't make me regret this,
yeah,
because she kind of finally in a way accepted the fact that like this really is the right decision, at least in this time, because if not, all of reality will cease to exist.
correct.
So fine, I will allow it, but she was very hesitant. She didn't want to. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on the scene in the Wisconsin lab in Victor's lab.
I can honestly see how it goes in like two ways. With Sylphie, is definitely a big moment for her because earlier on at the World's Fair in the Ferris wheel when she was fighting Loki, kind of a repeat from like the season finale where he was defending like Victor Timely,
Yeah,
he who remains, stuff like that.
definitely.
Where she's even talking about like, hey, I don't find any pleasure in doing this, but I have to since he's like a danger to everybody and everything. But again, later on, by the end of the episode, she lets him go because like Victor's pleading with her. Then I think she's also kind of seeing how like Loki is right, but also she's kind of saying this isn't the same person. So like am I really going to try to make the same mistake and probably make things worse? Because I think she does know that ultimately this is mostly her fault, but she can't keep projecting things further. But she does have to change and let this obsession go.
Mhm.
And I think she does, but we'll kind of see how much later on it goes into it later on, how episodes go. And then we have it with Renslayer, where again she kind of goes off on like Mobius, where she's talking about like all she's ever done has been for the TVA. She sacrificed her own happiness. She had to put the TVA's authority above
She's whining.
everything. Yeah, she's whining, and then she's essentially going off where she used to be this very moral, high, upstanding of goodness, but she's now just become like this low, kind of crazy person, obsessed. Whereas Mobius, he's kind of become more of an upstanding person. And again, she kind of goes off on Mobius how like he's not a leader, but he's more of a team player. And I think that goes more into like what can make him a good leader with the TVA going down the line. Since like he does nothing else but for the TVA, since that's like all he's known and what he want and what he chooses to do with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And yeah, so these are really big, some good character moments between Sophie and then Renslayer, where where Renslayer and Mobius have kind of like switched their roles, really,
yeah.
where she's the role crazy person, and he's like the more upstanding person trying to do right, but in his own way, working against Loki, where even though Renslayer is still saying how like Loki is still the wrong person to believe in, even though it's been proven otherwise that he's the best person to help with this.
Mhm.
yeah. I really like that scene between Sylvie and Victor Timely. I think she saw herself in him, because up to this point, this is the first variant she meets of him, and the speech he gave her, that that's not me, that's not the person I am, you don't know who I am. That's the same logic, that she uses, in the sense that she says that she's not a Loki, like she's her own person, she's her own character. She doesn't have to like follow the same path that every Loki is destined to.
Yeah.
And she kind of saw that in Victor, and that's why I think she, as you said, she accepted the fact that, she had to like help in this situation, and more so she had to accept the fact that not every Kang was responsible for her life, you know.
Right.
So that was pretty interesting. And going to Ravonna, uh, I think it was so cool how, like, after Sylvia accepted the fact that that Kang wasn't her enemy anymore, she turned back again to Ravonna and she's okay, but you, I still have beefs with you, like, bro, he just
Yeah.
grab her and kick her back. She's like, okay, you wanna meet, the end of time, kick her, bro, back to the Citadel at the end of time, where we still see the corpse
Yeah.
rotting of He Who Remained. That was a crazy shot to me. Like the whole Citadel like falling apart. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, dude, what a shot, what a scene. I
Yeah.
love that. And then Miss Minutes still with Ravonna. Dude, I hate Miss Minutes.
Dude,
Like,
that I was about to touch on that
I
right there
hate
at
her.
the end in the Citadel. She was acting crazy.
She's weird, bro. I think like I don't know, but like she's setting up so
Bro,
many
he maybe
things.
programmed her to just be his like little evil just
Yeah.
AI, like
And
like
the
it
thing
was
is
like
like,
everything we've known about Miss Minutes until now, like meaning season 1 was all just like a facade.
yeah. And the real question is what variant created her, like with what
Mm.
purpose, Because at the end of the day, we know that with Loki, we've understood that the time in the MCU works differently than what they explained to us in Infinity War and in Endgame.
Right.
It's not linear anymore. It's circular. So everything is like gonna go back to the same place it was, So at the
Yeah.
end of everything, there's still gonna be a Kang sitting somewhere, controlling the flow of time and everything, because that's how it's supposed to be and that's how it's written already.
Right.
So
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential stuff to this. Also, I kind of noticed about like two things that seems very important. Because on the ferry on the boat where Victor Talmy is talking with Sylphie, he did mention how like most of the designs and everything is from the TVA guidebook itself, but he also made his own designs. But then he goes right into a page where it shows OB, so it kind of makes you wonder how much more involvement does OB really play into this besides just helping to fix the temporal loom?
interesting.
And one other than another thing, like going back to what you said, Jorge, where with Renslayer and Kang being a couple, like in the comics, and probably going forward MCU. I'm kind of wondering how like Miss Minutes has like this big secret to tell Renslayer, and she's
Yeah.
and even saying that how Renslayer is going to be so angry about it. And I think makes you go back to what happened in episode 1 of the season 2's premiere, where Loki's in the past, where the TVA is like starting to form,
Mhm.
and he goes over this whole recording between Kang and Renslayer, and it makes you wonder like were they much of a thing that formed the TVA together? And she's like, they were lovers, and Renslayer like trusted him the most and loved him, but then found out, but it's probably gonna find out how that Kang or some variant basically wiped her memory to basically have no memory of him or anything she's known about him to basically
Oh.
be like this new type of authority for the TVA going forward as we knew her in season 1.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yo.
true. Again,
I
like
like that
I
theory.
I want to see like where the show goes, and if they're gonna show us the moment that Khan decides to change the TVA from like being like
Yeah, I would love to see that
about
moment.
him and make it this facade of like the three gods. I forgot the name right now. The Or they called the three reptiles were cyborgs at the end.
The Timekeepers?
The timekeepers, yeah, when he like changed to these timekeepers and he's like leading like the memory of the workers or the TVA, or like even like how is he like kidnapping the people from the timelines, and the branches to put them in the TVA, like I want to see like how he created it. To be honest, like
You want that curtain peeled. You want to see behind
yeah,
the curtain,
yeah. I
yeah.
don't need a full episode of it. Obviously, I just want like a little flashback or something that hints us like how it was built, how
Yeah.
it's created, how did it
Kind of
change.
like how like in Secret Invasions, they sometimes started some episodes with some flashbacks that gave really good info on like what was
Yeah,
going on. Like Nick Fury's relationship, for example. That was one of those flashbacks that kind of gave us more info on that. Like
yeah.
something like that with about this would be dope. I agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'd definitely be out for that. And one other thing is, another thing I also noticed how like when they made it to Victor Tomley's like lab and he picked up this one item that he needed, where Miss Minutes was talking about, is this what he was seeking? And the way it looked, I'm kind of thinking that might be Kang's time chair that was used in Quantum Mania, that he helped use the child through like the different realities of time and things like that.
Oh shoot. Yeah.
Maybe.
He did
Because
say
that's
it was a
because
very important item to him.
yeah, because even in comics, that was like literally Kang's like thing that he mostly used to go through time to help him change events and things like that. So it's a very important piece, even in his comic lore.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
true.
Yeah.
And one thing to clarify, because obviously right now it's a little confusing, like how the time works in the MCU. Like I've been like reading, comments on like internet, social media, etc. And so many people are worried that the branches that were like pruned are, for example, Tobey's Spider-Man's, timeline, or Andrew's timeline, or Fox timelines, the X-Men's or Blade. But it's not really. It's different. We have to remember that it's different universe stack up on top of each other. So we have like literally different like sacred timelines on top of each other, and out of every sacred timeline we have branches. So more, for example, it will be like the what if branches were pruned, during like the second episode, for example, and not so much about like the X-Men or like, these other characters,
Yeah,
That's a good way of explaining it.
Yeah, you're right about that. Cause I was honestly gonna get pretty confused with that too. Cause like even before off camera and everything, you were literally telling about the whole idea with the branch timeline and sacred timeline thing of what was going on in this latest episode. Even then, it still got me almost kind of confused a bit. Because even in the same episode, Ob was talking about how like the other branches that were pruned were starting growing back, or like a new branch were forming from the ones that were pruned. So it's like resetting itself or remaking itself with different branch timelines and stuff, right?
It's like evolving.
Yeah, kind of like, if you remember like in episode 6 when he was like doing the explanation of like how the multiversal war happened and everything.
Yeah.
There's like a moment where he shows like timelines like stacking on top of each other, and then when those timelines branches, they kind of like connect to each other, like because they're close, and that's when incursions happen. That's when like universes get destroyed, with each other. but
Uh,
but yeah, it's a good clarification, because again, like the branches we see prune are not Tobey Maguire, or Andrew Garfield, but
Right.
more like the what if, episodes, like what if Wanda became a zombie, or stuff like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Also, man, also that makes me wonder about how, like, in the Spider Verse films, where it talks about like the Spider Verse thing and like the canon events and things like that, how that kind of goes along with like the timeline, brand and things like that. 'Cause that feels like a whole.
Yeah,
That feels like a whole other thing stacked on top of another entirely.
Definitely.
yeah, that's like a whole nother component to it, for
Yeah.
sure. I agree.
Yeah.
Time is complicated.
Hey, I mean,
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, the
if
multiverse is
not,
complicated.
ask Kang, like.
Right. Right. Um but does anybody else have any other thoughts on episode 3?
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that pretty much covers the entirety of the episode. It's definitely my favorite episode so far. I think you guys said the same. It's really good, and now it's just exciting to see where we go from here, because now I feel like now is really where the speed is going to pick up, because really anything could really happen now, truly, because we kind of got like the vagueness out of it, and now it's like this is now how we're going about. I mean, we can assume one thing, which is that now that Victor Timely, a Kang variant, is at the TVA, he's gonna be able to assist with fixing the issue with the temporal loom and all that's going on with that. But after and outside of that, who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm definitely excited. But on that note, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. We hope you enjoyed this video. This was our Loki season 2, episode 3 recap and review. And again, if you guys enjoy videos like this, we try to upload them at least once a week, sometimes more. Please consider subscribing because it really does help us out. And if you like this video, please make sure to click that thumbs up button down there because it really does help us out, and let us know, engage with us in the comment section. Did you guys watch this episode? Are you watching this series in general? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Anything Loki season 2 or Loki in general, please talk to us down in the comment section. We'd love to engage with you guys. But with that being said, we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.